Welcome to the second episode of my prefab editing series. It's kind of important, if you haven't seen the first one, that you do so. A card's about to appear, I guess, with everything in there, a link. But there's also links below and a playlist on my channel. So watch that, and then as we go through, we're going to become experts in all things prefabs and POI. Welcome back everyone to episode 2 of the Level Prefab Editor series here on Physics Games. Well, let's get stuck in. I hope you did your homework and you had a mess around, because it's quite simple. The more you mess around, the more you play with, the more you become proficient at doing this. So today we're going to be looking at, well, start off with a bit of building, but we're also going to have a look at what we can do when we build, copying and pasting and things like that. But here we are where we left off, and we had our little level here, our ground level. And if I press not tab, if I press escape, and then I go to level tools, we can show that ground level like we did before. And we can see everything is correct. I like to check that now and again. But here we go. We've got this. If anyone has built something and then they pressed escape and they decided under the debug tools to press playtest, you may have had a little issue because, of course, once physics kicks in here, then, of course, this is going to be floating in the air and it's going to fall down. So we've got to do something, because we raised this, of course, last episode, just so we had some room underneath for future underground building. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to press Z and put a block here, and then I'm going to go to the far corner but above and press Z here, and I'm going to go to that terrain block, and when that's all filled in with that in hand, press L, and now it's completely filled. Now this means that we can press playtest. If we do press playtest, we will end up at in a scenario where we might have to kind of use God mode to get up to it, because it may not place it. I think it places everything at the very lowest level, but in the end it means now we can play test without things breaking. So let me have a look at the little house that I made. Here it is. I'll clear my hands there. A bed, the ability to look at grass but not touch it, and a computer setup. Everything that I need, and I placed a few blocks down. A very basic deal, but you can see, and the reason I did this particular shape and style is because sometimes we get little bugs in this game. So I'm going to go to my little block, which is no longer actually the standard cube because I've been messing about. But if I go up to this block, for example, and this happens with many blocks, I hold down R and I copy shape and rotation. So there it is. And if I was to place these all along here without any problem whatsoever, then they would place all lovely with all the beautiful wood by default painted all over it. But what I'm going to do now is what I expect most people to have tried to do, is press Z and then Shift G to extend something, because this is going to help us build a lovely wall. And then we're going to press L to kind of paste that in, pressing delete to get rid of that box. But if we come round here, you will see that there is a random paint job, some glass in this case. Sometimes it's like tiles or bricks, but it's just very, very random. And this is a bug that we get. So we use the admin paintbrush, and as long as we've set this up to paint, let's say all sides, then I can click on that with a left mouse button and it will just delete everything and make everything back to kind of the base colors. So that's just a little bug be aware of, especially if you're pasting large areas of things. Highlighting, pressing J to clear again. So here's my little prefab. Now it's time to make our life a little bit easier. Just a few more little tips and tricks before we get stuck in. I'm going to press F1, and when I'm in here, we might want to be able to, we will want to be able to basically change the time in game, because as we are playing, time is still ticking. You can see that at the very top of the screen there. But if I press F1 and I type in ST, that means set time. And if I press space, then I put 1, space, then I press, let's say, 5, that would be 5 o'clock. If I was to type in 17, that would be 1700 hours or 5 p.m. But if I say 5 o'clock and then I say 0 minutes and I press enter, then everything changes to 5 o'clock in the morning. So I can kind of keep shifting the time around just so I can see the POI or prefab in different lights and just kind of like get a feel of what it looks like. And sometimes, you know, at night time, it's obviously quite difficult to see. I'm going to press escape and I'm going to go to this little slider here. And this slider allows me to quickly change that time and see things again at different angles. And you can see that at night it can get quite dark, even though I've got my brightness set to maximum at the moment, just because it's easier when I'm building these prefabs. But we'll dump this back around about 5 o'clock in the morning. And there's one other thing that I like to do, and that's press F1 and then type in weather. Weather fog 0. And if I do that, it gets rid of all that kind of fog that we get in game and gives me much more clarity as I'm going around looking at that beautiful POI. So here we are, we've got everything set up. The only thing is there's a few more things that we need to know. Firstly, I built this with my lovely door. I would say this is the front of my house, pointing east and west. You can do that, and you can place this POI correctly into a world, but if you get into the habit of doing this correctly and making sure that you're facing north, and this is the southern line, and this is the start of what you're doing, it just generally ties in with everything already pre-built into the game. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to hit the old Z key, and I'm just going to kind of fill in the whole of my beautiful building as such. And this is what I need you to try. If I press X and I press X again, and I keep pressing X again, I can rotate the whole object until I get it into the right position. Now, if I made my box too big, for example, so I'll make my box all the way over from here to here, because I might have things outside that I want to move, and then I press X, then everything might get slightly shifted. And of course, we covered this last time. I want to be able to go Control Shift C and then Control Shift V, which produces a kind of an image of what I want. So I can hold down G, move it about, put it somewhere near the middle, and then press V again. Now, of course, if there's anything left, it's still going to be there. Have I put it in the right direction? No, because it still says south and I want it to face north. So it's already highlighted. I'm going to press X again, and then I'm going to leave it highlighted. I'm going to go Control Shift C, Control Shift V. I'm going to move it across, kind of get it roughly where I want it. Control V, and bam, it's kind of in the middle. And I am left with a little bit, but that's okay. I will just kind of like highlight that one and hit J. So now I have my POI with what I classify as the front of the house. And I did notice it. I bet you some of you did. I did notice it. I'm going to get rid of it. That little bit there. I'm now looking north, and this is the southern side of the POI. It just ties in with everything else that's been built, and it makes life a little bit easier when we're setting up some of the kind of more advanced stuff later on. So there we are, all looking good. We've got our own little house now. Let me totally destroy it by messing around and showing you some different features. So of course, if I just get myself a nice standard square block, there is, of course, what we showed you last time, and I'm sure you've used to make this. There is all the stuff that we can do with G. Holding G, Shift G, pressing L, making walls, pressing J, deleting walls. That just makes life a lot easier as we do it. Of course, you've got to kind of have a bit of, you've got to get your brain on here when you're doing this, and it's worth kind of designing your POIs, because you might want to use a wall that's a bit thinner. And if you do that, and if I press my left mouse button, I rotate these things, and I keep pressing it, but what happens if I wanted that previous one. Do I sit here pressing the button forever and ever and ever, trying to get back to it? Well, if you do go past it once, if you press R, that's the same as rotating the shape, but in the opposite direction. So I can go from one way, left click R, and I can get my block. But you got to basically think about what you want to do with these. You got to get, as I say, you got to get your brain on, because when you're designing these things and you fill these up, the issue is that, of course, this is going to take up a whole block. So if you want to place another item next to the inner wall or the outer wall of your POI, you've got to kind of make that decision early on. It doesn't mean you can't change it later, but it's just something you've just got to consider and well worth thinking about as you build. If you've got a block in hand and you want to start messing with things, like, so let's say this little stairs here. Let's say I thought I didn't want stairs. What I want is I want a little step. That's all I want. Well, if I hold down Shift, it enters into this block. And if I hit left click, then it just deletes that single block. It's a nice easy way of deleting individual things. Maybe I want to change the door, so I just just hold shift and then left click, and it just deletes that one thing. If I hold Control Z, then it undoes that last action, and I undo that one as well. Oops, I think I accidentally pressed Z there. If I press shift and highlight that block, but then I right click, it replaces it with the other block that's in my hand. And again, these are the kind of things that you just kind of get used to, and it just takes a bit of practice, but it's well worth knowing. Now, it certainly is well worth people pressing escape, going over to the prefab browser over here, and then having a look around some of the existing POIs. So if you type in house, it brings up lots of the different houses. So I'll just pick a random modern house and then hit load. I think I'm going to save my changes from that little deal there, and I'm walking around, press Q, up I go. I might be looking around this house and I think, oh, there's something nice and interesting there, something that I want. And it could be anything here. It could be this kind of weird kind of little cracked block here. And we want to take some of this stuff over and back to our own POI. So if I hold Shift and Z, oops, I don't think that really worked. It ended up pointing at that, didn't it? And this is something that gets a little bit tricky in this. We've got a block here for the window. We've got a block here for this. And this is actually inside here. So it gets a bit tricky to try and, quickly grab it. But if you get a bit lucky, or basically you just make the single little block, you can press G. And of course, as I said before, we can move our little arrows. You can actually use WSAD to move this block, and C and space, but it's quite difficult. It's a bit of a craziness with the old hand, but it is absolutely possible. Shift and G, I'm going to expand this, and I'm just going to go Control C now, not Control Shift C. In the end, it doesn't. There's kind of an overlap, but there's also a slight difference between them all. I just like to get into the habit of going Control Shift C on everything, just because then I know that I'm getting kind of like the right result in this editor. But anyway, I've copied this, but there's also a way, if I press delete to get rid of that blue box, of me being able to get these blocks. And the copy focus block button in the editor is your middle mouse button. So if I look at this one and I press the middle mouse button, and you look at my toolbar in the first available space and I press it, then boom, well, there we go. I just said to you that there was stuff in the way, and it's ended up copying this block, which is a bit of a problem. So I'm going to press U, and if I type in a load of gobbledygook here, I'll end up with a blank space here, and I'll drag this in here, click in there, and it's all disappeared. So this is the kind of thing that I end up doing. I end up kind of breaking a few blocks just so I've got good access to this. And I'm going to look at it, I'm press middle mouse button, and you can see that that block now has appeared. I've got 99 of those concrete half destroyed 05 left blocks, which I would have never have worked out all on my own. And I've got them in my hand ready to go, which is great. In fact, let's put them up here, because then I could show you how to easily access the top tool belt in a moment. I'll look at this one and I'll middle click that one, and again that got in the way. So you've got to kind of, you've got to think about these things sometimes. It really kind of, you spend a lot of time wasting your time in the editor sometimes. But anyway, I'll middle mouse click again, and if I do that, go up to it, you can see now the first available space was over here, and it just happens to be the right version of this block. So again, pressing U, I've already typed in gobbledygook, so I'm going to just plonk that in there, and everything's nice. So I've copied it, and I've managed to get a copy of each block. And when you use copy focus block, they also come pre-painted in this format, which is kind of useful. So let's go back now to testing 1, 2, 3, as I called it. You'll have to do whatever you called yours. I'm going to discard changes, of course, because I don't want to ruin my existing POI. But when I'm here, I could say, oh yeah, that was nice. I want something that looks a little bit like that. I could highlight here. I'm going to go Control Shift V, and okay, so it's pasted it in, but my orientations are a bit weird. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just tap X, and I'm going to keep tapping X until it rotates to the direction that I want, holding G, bringing it into position, and then pressing Control V or Control Shift V and putting it into place. So that looks kind of good. Now what I want to do is I want to put some extra blocks here. Now again, I could just copy and paste things, I suppose, but if we look at it, that section is empty. So I'm going to have to find a full destroyed block if I want to get it in there. But, you know, if I want to place the blocks, then I'll just get rid of them. And I have got these blocks on my top toolbar. And if I go down my middle mouse button using the scroll, I'll eventually get there. But there is a quick way to do that. 1, of course, is the first part of the toolbar. 2, 3, 4, 5. If I go Shift 1, then that goes to the top section of the toolbar. And if I rotate a little bit of this, I can try and make it the same as it was before, but it's only partially rotating. So I press R and hold it, and then I go to advanced, and I keep going until it kind of matches what I had before. So let's just keep going. We've got to keep going and keep going and keep going. And eventually we get there, and then I think to myself, oh, I went past, so I press R, and then I can place this back down. Now I can go to this next one, and I'm going to look at this block here, make sure there's nothing in the way. I'm going to press the R, hold it, and then I'm going to copy rotation. And that's going to put that in the same kind of manner as the other one was. Now, unfortunately, because it's a left and right, it's not put it in order. But hey-ho, live and learn. It's worth a go just in case. So I'll get this into position, and there we go. I went past it by 1, so I pressed R, place it down, and now I've got a little bit of concrete that looks a little bit weird. But you know, I could take my paintbrush, point it at some of this wood, hold down R, use the texture picker to pick that out, and then I could click on all these different parts here, which gets a little bit complicated again because well, this is in the way. So holding down R, paint all sides of the block, and then I'll clear it all out for you just so I can right click and everything gets painted all in one. So maybe that's the look I want for, you know, that's my air conditioning. I don't think I really want that there, but still, it's just an example for you to see. So if I highlight a section here, just totally randomly, you can see that I can't see the selection because there's a wall in the way. If I press and hold left alt, that kind of section now appears, and it can be a bit disorientated and a little bit difficult on the old keyboard, but it's very useful when we start to place zombies and we want to kind of put boxes around them to set them to their kind of like spawn points and their spawning abilities. So yeah, we'll get to that in the future, in a future episode. But anyway, just hold down left alt if you just want to see quickly the whole section that you have highlighted. Delete this, and then yes, we've got 2 more things I want to go through. I think I'll give you your homework first for a bit of a messing. This is just to kind of get an idea of how to use the blocks and everything, but it's an extra function that we get with the G key. So let me go to this block and then pick something that might be useful for me. There we are. That's an interesting shape. That's going to help me do what I want to do. I'm just going to delete everything that I have actually done so far, because I don't need this little place right now. I'm just going to clear it out with the J after selection. And yeah, I'm just going to place this block right down here. Now you might be asking, what block is that? That looks interesting. And as I said, you can walk up to it and middle mouse button and take a copy of it all painted as it is there. But there is another way if you're ever on a POI, and you can do this in game as well when you're in debug mode, because now, of course, when you're playing the game and you get into prefab editing, you see something and think, oh, I like the look of that. So you need to kind of take a note of what POI it is and what block it might be. If you go up to a block and have a look and then press F11, then you get to see kind of lots of information about it. And it tells me the POI name. It tells me it's called testing 123. And of course, in game, it will tell you what the proper POI is. And then with the focus block, the one that's in there, it will tell you the shape. And this is a cube half pole 0.5. Now that's the name that it's called in the kind of Unity editor. That's its kind of proper name. But if I go into here and I press R, we can see that this block is cube half pillar 0.5. So at some point you could just type cube half pillar and it might not come up, but that's because it was cube half pillar. And if we do that, then of course it comes up. So even though you don't need the underscores as such, if you were to go cube underscore, suddenly you wouldn't get anything. So just whatever you see, try and pick that and write it down, and then hopefully it will help you find it in the shape menu. So why have I picked this menu? Well, I want to do a bit of painting on it. What I want to do is I want to make it stand out a lot. So I'm going to, in fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you this properly. I'm just going to put a few of these on top of here and get my admin gun and shoot out some of these blocks. I want this floating up here. And we're going to put a big target on the bottom. In fact, well, you got to remember to take off paint all sides. I'll leave it on, press left mouse button, and it should, or did I press it? Yes, I pressed it. It should get rid of absolutely everything. I think it's all clear again. Pressing R, getting rid of paint all sides. In fact, I'm going to go straight back to paintbrush. How many times do I make that mistake? But there we go. So there's our little target on here. We're going to take some other little colours and make it look pretty on all sides. Right, there we go. It looks like when I paint this side, it also paints this kind of top section. We've got a purple, a red, a white, the target, and some of that gorgeous wallpaper there. Yuck. Anyway, it's there. Why have I done this? Well, because by holding Shift Z, I'm going to highlight it, and we're going to show you that extra tool. So, as we have described, you hold G, and you can move that box. You hold Shift G, and you can stretch that box. But if you hold Control G, we now get these lines with an extra little line on top. And this is the mirror function. Now, we're not going to necessarily notice what's going on here. We have white on this side, and we have, I think that's meant to be, that looks like white again, doesn't it? That's meant to be the purple, I believe. Let's have a look. Yes, it is. It's just this time of day. So let's go ST1120 and make it midday, so it all looks a little bit better. Let's basically hold Control G, and then I'm going to drag that way. Now, what's that done? That has swapped round or made a mirror of the block. So it's taken the white and the purple and swapped them round. If I hold Shift Z and highlight that, but then we extend this in one direction, and then I hold Control G, I can then flip this across, and here we go. I've now got a mirror version of this. But there's a little bit of a problem here. Is it really a mirror version? Trust me, it is. But we've kind of got some obscure, weird deals going on with the paint. For some reason, the pink that should be, if it is there, it's mirrored. And the red that should be mirrored in the middle and the pink on the... Oh my God, I'm just confused. Well, that's because I mirrored in the east-west direction. And we only... It's one of these weird things, it only really works in the north-south when it comes to the painting. This is why we paint last, and we do, if we're using weird tools like that, we do this second. So now in the the north-south direction, I'm going to hold Control G, I'm going to flip this across, and fingers crossed now, what we're going to have is we're going to have white has been mirrored to the other side, and purple has been mirrored to this inside, and everything else should look roughly the same. So mirroring with paint works well in north-south direction, but it doesn't work in the east-west direction. Just a little bug in the game, not really anything that we can do there. And we can mirror these in lots of different ways. So we can obviously mirror them up and down, so I could just have them a couple of blocks down, Control G, and I press this, and I get my mirroring going on. And you can see that, again, the paintbrush in my orientation, it's not north-south, this is now up-down. It's gone a bit weird. If I hold G on its own and lift this up, and then I try that again, Control G and up, then what's happened? Well, my target's at the bottom again. So the painting is something you've got to avoid. Don't bother mirroring anything with painting. Now, to be honest, I don't use this tool very much. I don't use this tool because what everyone really wants to do is they want to take something like this and they want to then be able to rotate rather than mirror. They want to be able to take it and put it into a position that looks something like this. And this is something you cannot do unless someone can tell me how to do it, because I don't know how to do it. You can't take something like this and rotate it round in 90 degrees. And then the video is getting quite long, so let's start off, or at least tickle the old pickle when it comes to setting up your prefabs, because next episode we are going to, now we know the orientation that we want it, we're going to have to do something a little bit more advanced, and I've got a lot of lovely information for you to do with that. I'm going to, stuff that you won't find anywhere else. but it's to do with how you form these junctions to join in with the randomly world generated tiles. If I press escape and then I search for RWG, I am going to just pick up a random tile, and I might save that right now. And this is, as we have mentioned before, let me just clear my hotbar a little bit. I'm going to press U, make sure that some garbage is written in here, and I'm going to do this. I could drag everything up onto this row here, and as long as I'm in creative menu, I press U, I can hit the kind of trash bin and it clears the whole line. The issue is if you press both and you get rid of the things that you want. But anyway, we're in here now, and on this tile, these are 42 by 42 in this case, but this is where a POI will be placed. And sometimes our POIs have ways of kind of blending into the roadside, and it can get very, very complicated. And as I said, many people have asked me this question. We're going to dedicate most of next episode to how we do that, but I'll show you how I actually in reality often sort myself out for this. So let's say I want to, you know, do some kind of rural thing here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to load up a POI. And I'm going to go kind of rural. Now you can see these park driveways. These are the things that we're talking about, and we'll go through next week. But let's go and get a lot rural filler, for example. Now, if I pick one of these up, it doesn't have anything here because there's no actual driveway. It's best to kind of try and find a house or a similar building to what you want. So if I was to go to Remnant House here, we can see this one looks like a 42 by 42. We will check, pressing Z on this side and pressing Z on this side. And hey ho, what does it say? It says 42 by 42. Backspace to get rid of. So this might be perfect. I want to make my own knackered house, or I want to make a nice house. I want to have this kind of deal here. I want to be able to check my ground level, and I can go down. This is on base ground, so maybe I want to build something that doesn't have a basement, or I want to lift this whole thing up by highlighting it and copying and pasting it. But it's got all this gubbins in, this kind of interface between a driveway and a road. And this is how I do it. I'm going to show you, as I say, I'm going to show you how to do all this properly, because you can make some wonderful things if you do. But most of the time, I just kind of highlight the section that I want. And they've made this one too deep, which is fair play. I'm going to take this and I'm going to highlight the whole section, lift it right up, press J, and then I'm going to come back with my terrain filler because there's some obscurity here, which is fine. I'll just leave that there for now. I'm going to fill this back in. This one happens to be 2 depth. I'll stick with exactly how they made it in the game here. Press L, fill it in, and then I'm going to build my POI. And I'm going to base it upon this already existing junction, which must be in the right place and must be set up correctly. But of course, I've just taken a real POI and I have deleted everything. Am I going to mess up my game? Well, I'm going to do this. I'm going to press escape and I'm not going to hit save. What I'm going to do is I'm going to try and open something else. So I'm going to click on this and I'm going to hit load, and it's going to say, hey, remnant underscore house underscore 18 has unsaved changes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and call this, I'm going to go testing, and instead of 1, 2, 3, I'm going to call this underscore house. So now I can hit save, and that's not what I saved. That's jumped to the one that I tried to open. Now, if I search for testing, we can now see we've got my testing 1, 2, 3 and my testing house. And if I load that up, then I am all set up, ready to go with one of these interfaces. Now, what people try and do is they try and move this and mess around with it, and that is nigh on impossible. So stick with what you've got here, or wait until next episode and I'll show you how to do all these things yourself. And I'll even have a beautiful little spreadsheet which is going to show you what you can and cannot do with every single type of POI that you might want to make. But I think I'm going to keep it there. It's become a bit of a longer video, but I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope it's useful. Please do me a favor. Of course, we'll just go and take our little obscure deals over here, press all our buttons and make it blank, and some videos will pop up. But your job now is to practice. That's your homework. Use all those 3 different functions you can with G. Have a mess around with the POI that you've built so far. See if you can change a few things up or add a few extra things from the creative menu. And I will see you next week. Thanks a lot. We've just reached 3,000 subs. So, wow. Thank you. It's all down to you guys. I'm loving it. I'm enjoying it. And I'll see you very soon. Goodbye.